A few months ago, I uprooted my entire life to move to South Korea for no reason whatsoever, but I figured, hey, since I'm here, let's see how good at League I still am, as I got the urge to grind high elo again in the most competitive region. But for the past 6 years or so at Skill Cap, I've mostly focused on playing and reviewing low elo to help students improve. I would occasionally hit Challenger to prove to myself that I'm still capable of coaching, but most of the time, I just let my account decay. So not only am I rusty, but my mid lane champion pool needs a lot of work. The last time I took seriously, I think I was maining Banner of Command Garen, Lichbane Lulu, and Ravenous Hydra Graves. My champion pool is definitely a bit outdated, so I was experimenting, trying to find new picks that fit my playstyle, and I ran into a Masters one trick who destroyed me in lane with the most random pick ever. So I stole it from them, and it's become one of my favorite champions that I'm going to be playing from now on. I'm going to show you why Zyra mid lane is a hidden OP pick, but also how to play her so you can immediately go have fun and win games on it as well. Okay, so what's the gimmick? Every off-meta pick always has some weird thing going on, right? Well, if you didn't know, Zyra gets more seeds on her W every time she kills a unit. This is why Zyra jungle works and why her clear speed is so crazy. You're constantly killing jungle monsters, resetting your W, allowing you to spawn infinite plants. What you're trying to take advantage of in mid or even as a bot carry is that you are fighting enemies throughout the game over minion waves. You're either fighting them for priority, chunking them before an objective, or so on. And it is very obnoxious to deal with Zyra because as you clear a wave, you get more plants, and you're just making a garden in front of them, which makes you super annoying to contest. But here's why I personally think she's so strong in mid lane. The way her plants work is that they have 2 hit points. Some champions with unique passives can kill the plants in 1 auto. Usually most champions have to kill them in 2 autos or an auto plus a spell, but AoE abilities only deal like 1/4 of the plant's health. So because a lot of mid laners only have AoE spells and low attack speed, they struggle to deal with the plants, giving you a very strong laning phase. I would immediately put Zyra at a solid A tier in terms of viability, but she also has that hidden Vel'Koz buff where no one really knows what's going on when they're against you. So a lot of enemy players end up losing their minds trying to randomly counter me, like this Orianna who randomly walked into the middle of the lane just to step on my seed, and now she's just zoned entirely, which lets me cut her off from lane and kill her with my support who happen to be here. The power of weird off-meta picks will definitely give you an edge in a lot of games. Sadly, finding these types of niche but effective picks can be quite annoying, especially because almost all content on YouTube is just trying to satisfy the algorithm gods these days. You never really know what's actually good info or just pure clickbait. That's why for our commentaries page at SkillCapped, we have a team dedicated to finding the best S-tier picks or obscure champions flying under the radar like Zyra, and then teaching you how to play them in your own elo. And it's all without that YouTube clickbait. That's on top of all of our fundamental courses where we partnered with some of the most respected teachers like Coach Rogue and Chippies, who have made excellent courses to help you climb that our subscribers love. We have so many tools to help you climb, and it's all backed by our money back guarantee. So if you're serious about climbing and you want to do it fast, use the discount link below to sign up. Okay, back to Zyra. The most important thing you need to know before you lock her in is that she's an item applier type of champion for a lot of the game. So when you think of champions like Brand or Malzahar, those tend to have lower AP ratios or base damage because their abilities apply item effects very reliably. That's why they tend to build stuff like Rylai's and Liandry's, because they apply those effects constantly. Zyra is very similar in that she can apply a ton of item effects like Comet, Scorch, Blackfire Torch, and Liandry's from a mile away with a single plant's auto attack. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that every champion spikes on item completions, obviously, but Zyra spikes extremely hard when you complete a proc item because you become an uninteractive poke monster, being able to proc it from a million yards away. With that in mind, let's jump into the lane phase so you get off to a good start every single game. First, do not AFK at level 1 like I'm doing here. The problem that Zyra has at level 1 is that she doesn't have her W yet, and a lot of the power of your champion comes from your plants. So you can see I'm having to play back against this Orianna because, well, she just outranges me. So what you should do is around the 1 minute mark, start posturing in the middle of the lane so you can passively spawn seeds around you. And it's very hard to stop you from doing this, even if your opponent knows what you're up to. If they try to walk over your seeds to get rid of them, well, you can just spawn a plant right before they get to them. So there's really not a lot your opponent can do about this. Then when the waves come in, you're mostly using the seeds that spawn around you to simply push at level 1. You're not trying to win the lane yet. Just use the extra extra pet damage and health bars to contest the push so you don't get run over early on. Now, hopefully you've hit level 2, you skill W, and now you're ready to trade properly. The most important detail to Zyra's laning is understanding plant aggro though. Unfortunately, your plants will not hit an enemy champion if there's minions around. They will, however, focus your opponent if you hit them with either your Q or E. So as a professional coach, the best advice I'm ever going to give you is just hit your spells and you will do a lot of damage. But that's not always possible, especially because Zyra's Q is pretty short ranged for mid lane and her E is very unreliable. So one of your main trading tactics is that you're going to use a spell to spawn a plant, but make sure you put your seed away from the minions and only in range of your opponent. This way your plant really only has one target to hit, so it's going to focus your opponent, giving you reliable poke. And one final method you can use is once you've got some levels under your belt, you can try to finish off minions with a Q right as you spawn a plant. It's a similar effect to before. You're getting rid of all the minions around, so your plant only has one target to hit. And those are your main trading methods. Zyra is a very feast or famine type of laner where you will feel so oppressive if you have control over the wave. If you're the one in the driver's seat during lane, you just get so many free plants by CSing and by your passive naturally spawning some around you, and because you have wave control, the enemy wave is thinner, so it's much easier to land plant harass. It's almost impossible to take back control over a Zyra who's already winning lane. On the other hand though, being on the back foot does feel kind of bad. Like if your opponent has wave control over you, they can much more reliably walk over your passive seeds and it's going to be harder to find harass. But Zyra's laning is really good, especially if you set up at level 1, so situations like this are not that common. And now for the best part, if you're doing well in the game and you complete your first item like Blackfire Torch, you become so oppressive. With infinite mana and haste, you can just spawn plant after plant after plant after plant, all from an uninteractive range that your opponent can't do anything about. It is just targeted harass over and over again. It is so toxic. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, this is what Zyra does best and will let you keep almost any lane opponent under their tower permanently. And that brings us to our mid game transition. You're basically just doing what you did earlier, but in a side lane. Versus like 90% of champions, even this Fed Gangplank, you just keep them locked under tower and you will have permanent priority. Of course, this isn't a macro guide. I'm not going to cover what to do with that priority here, but I'm sure you all know at this point that having permanent priority over your opponent is just a really good thing, right? And you definitely don't have to feel worried that you're a squishy mage in a side lane, since you're pretty good at dueling as long as you remember the difference between your plants. If you use your Q on your seeds, they're going to spawn longer range plants that can hit targets from pretty far away, whereas if you spawn them with your E, they will have a lot less range but will slow on every auto attack, which makes them very good for kiting enemy champions. They're definitely very niche to use, especially over your Q plants, but in duels they're very nice. Here's a situation I played absolutely terribly. I missed my initial E on this Renekton. No worries though, I just walk right into melee range of him and just ult myself. Then your plants go berserk, and as you can see, he's not able to stay on top of me through the slows and knockup. I missed so many spells, I wasted so many of my plants, and it didn't matter. You're just too annoying to deal with sometimes. The moral of the story here is, don't be afraid to play side lane as Zyra. I felt super in control of things in a side lane, and I always pushed up pretty aggressively. This is especially good to do because you're one of the few mages in the game who can actually take jungle camps. So stealing the enemy Gromp or Krugs every now and then can give you extra gold while denying the enemy jungler. And by the way, I'm not the one trolling here. My teammates are the ones playing around our 1-in-7 Trundle instead of me, so they definitely deserve to die, in game of course. Okay, now that we're past macro, let's talk team fighting. I'm gonna be honest, in a lot of fights, if you see a clump of people, just try to press R on them. Sometimes just pressing your buttons is pretty OP. And yeah, I carried that team by the way. But there's a couple of things you can do to perform even better. A fundamental most of you already know about is that being at an objective first is really good for vision control and whatever. But Zyra benefits from this a lot more, specifically because of her passive spawning seeds. So you should try to fight in areas that you've been standing around for like 15 to 20 seconds. You likely have a lot of random seeds lying around, giving you more options to play the fight out. Then, similar to the laning phase, if you happen to be fighting around a minion wave, you should try to aim your spells on your opponents and the wave at the same time. This way you're killing some minions, refreshing your W, giving you more seeds to play the fight out with. Finally, and most importantly, you want to try and place your plants at a good moment. Most of your damage is obviously coming from them, so you should try to press your plants when your opponents are busy. Like in this situation, my opponents aren't busy, so spawning both of my plants on top of them just gets them instantly killed, which is a huge waste. The ideal time to spawn your plants is when the enemy is directly fighting your team, which forces them to choose between killing them or hitting your teammates. So right now my Jinx is moving forward and is vulnerable, so I spawn another plant around her. So now the GP and Zeri are in a tough spot. If they hit the plants, well, Jinx is going to hit them for free, and if they hit Jinx, well, the plants are going to be super annoying. Since there's no good options for them, they're kind of forced to disengage from the fight. This is definitely where most of Zyra's skill expression in fights comes from, where and when you spawn your plants is a skill I'm working on as I try to learn her more and more. Cool, you've got everything you need to succeed. Now let's round things out with some build insights. For those of you who don't want to think about your build, you can run these runes, and Blackfire Torch, Sork Boots into Liandry's is your most common setup. Then you can just build more AP items. Zyra's AP ratios are kinda meh though, so don't feel like you need to buy Death Cap every single game. If you do, it should definitely be your 6th and final item. Now, if you don't mind thinking about your itemization, here's 3 build paths I've been tinkering with. Ludens, Sork Boots, and Shadow Flame for a penetration build is perfect in those games where you're your team's solo AP source and the enemy team is unlikely to build any magic resist. With this build, you're going to deal insane burst in fights, but be warned, you are quite squishy. So if your rat teammates that you TP'd to save, by the way, chase instead of helping you with the Camille, you might go down sometimes. Next is Liandry's Rush. The nice thing about Zyra is that because your W costs no mana and it resets on kills, you technically don't need a Lost Chapter item for mana and haste. They are nice, but not required. So Liandry's Rush is perfect versus enemy comps that have a lot of dive champions where having extra HP will help you survive their all-ins. Liandry's is definitely Zyra's most iconic item, and for good reason. Then after you build it, you can go whatever. Shadow Flame, Zhonya's, Rylai's, just kinda depends on what you need. And your final build option is the most common and what we discussed earlier. Blackfire Torch into Sork Boots is generally best into most comps. Zyra's not really a burst champion for the most part, so Blackfire Torch tends to play very well with her attrition playstyle. Then after Blackfire, you can go Shadow Flame versus low MR or Liandry's versus beefier comps. And finally, to wrap things up, the best part of playing Zyra. When the enemy team is trying their best to get away on 1 HP, you just snipe them with a single plant auto attack from 100 yards away, proccing all of your item effects. This happens so often, and it is so satisfying every single time. Definitely the biggest reason to play this champion. Alright, and that is really all you need to know to play her effectively. I hope you guys end up enjoying her as much as I am, and don't forget to sign up if you want access to the best educational courses on the internet for improving fast. Anyway, see you next time.